They called me just a secretary for 3 years. They fired me without a second thought. Little did they know I owned 47% of the company through my family trust. The look on their faces when I walked into that boardroom as their new boss? Priceless. Have you ever felt invisible? Like you're just a piece of furniture in a room full of important people? That was me. Athena Green, executive assistant to the CEO at Phoenix Industries. Just a secretary, they called me. If only they knew. 3 years ago, I walked through those gleaming glass doors of Phoenix Industries headquarters for the first time. Not as the heiress I truly was, but as a woman determined to understand my grandfather's legacy from the ground up. You see, he built this company from nothing, and I wanted to earn my place in it, not just inherit it. So I kept my last name quiet, used my middle name on applications, and got hired as an executive assistant. Every morning I'd arrive early to prepare the coffee just how Michael liked it, the CEO whose schedule I managed, whose calls I screened, whose life I essentially organized. I'd sit at my little desk outside his massive corner office, taking notes in meetings where million-dollar decisions were made, as if I were nothing more than a recording device. They'd talk around me, through me, about me, never to me. That's the thing about being invisible. You see everything when people don't think you're really watching. What started as an experiment in understanding became something more. I fell in love with the company all over again, its potential, its people, and yes, eventually, with Michael himself. But that's getting ahead of our story. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or pushed aside, this story is for you. Because sometimes life has a way of turning the tables when you least expect it. Sometimes the person they never bothered to truly see becomes the only person they can't ignore. So stay with me. I promise you'll want to see their faces when they realized exactly who they'd fired. When they understood that the simple black woman they discarded without a second thought was about to become the most powerful person in the room. I didn't plan to stay invisible forever. Just long enough to learn the truth about Phoenix Industries, the company my grandfather built with his calloused hands and brilliant mind. You see, when he passed, he left me a letter asking me to understand the company before I attempted to lead it. Know its heart before you try to be its head, he wrote. So I became Athena Green, executive assistant, rather than Athena Winters, heiress to the Phoenix fortune. My first week was eye-opening. The competitive culture, the backstabbing, the casual disregard for the little people. It was everything my grandfather would have hated. I watched middle managers take credit for their assistants' work. I saw talented people passed over because they didn't fit the unspoken mold. And at the center of it all was Michael Bennett, the young CEO brought in to modernize after my grandfather's passing. Michael wasn't what I expected. Ambitious, yes. Driven. Absolutely. But there was something else there. A flicker of compassion, of integrity, that seemed at odds with the cutthroat environment he presided over. I told myself my fascination was purely professional. I needed to understand this man who held my family's legacy in his hands. I kept detailed notes on everything, the concerning pattern of layoffs in departments with primarily black and brown employees, the environmental corners being cut, the toxic management practices. But I also noted the good. Michael's genuine excitement over new sustainable product lines, his quiet mentorship of young employees from underrepresented backgrounds, his evident discomfort with some of the board's more questionable decisions. In those early months, our relationship was purely professional. I was efficient, anticipating his needs before he voiced them. He was polite but distant, treating me with the absent-minded courtesy of someone who sees you as a function rather than a person. Neither of us could have predicted how thoroughly that would change, or where it would eventually lead us both. It happened so gradually that I almost didn't notice. The way Michael started asking my opinion on small things. What do you think of this proposal, Athena? Then on bigger things. The late nights when we'd order takeout and he'd insist I join him at the conference table instead of eating at my desk. The way his eyes would linger on mine just a moment too long during our morning briefings. Our first actual date wasn't planned. A client dinner was canceled last minute, and suddenly there we were, dressed up with reservations at the city's most exclusive restaurant. "Seems a shame to waste it," he said with that half-smile that made my professional resolve weaken. That night, we talked about everything except work. Our childhoods, mine carefully edited, our dreams, our favorite books. I saw a different Michael emerge, thoughtful, funny, vulnerable in ways he never showed at the office. The following Monday, a bouquet of wildflowers appeared on my desk. Not roses or lilies or anything predictable, but meadow flowers, the kind I'd mentioned loving as a child. The card simply read, "Thank you for Friday. -M." I pretended not to notice the curious glances from other staff members. Soon we were stealing moments wherever we could find them. A lingering hug when the elevator doors closed behind us, his hand brushing mine during document handoffs, a quick kiss in the stairwell that turned into something more heated until we broke apart, breathless and laughing at our own recklessness. Our first weekend away together was to a secluded beach house on the coast. Walking hand in hand along the shore at sunset, his arms wrapped around me as we watched the stars appear, whispering promises against each other's skin in the darkness. I never felt more myself than in those moments, which made the necessary deception all the harder to bear. The board meeting was scheduled for a Thursday. Nothing unusual about that. I'd prepared Michael's notes as always, arranged the catering, greeted each board member with the perfect balance of deference and efficiency. I didn't know it would be the last normal workday of my life. Richard Harper, VP of Operations, had been watching our relationship develop with thinly veiled disapproval. A tall man with cold eyes who'd been with the company since before my grandfather's passing, he represented the old guard, people who believed in hierarchy, in knowing your place. That morning, I caught him in Michael's office before I arrived, their heated whispers stopping abruptly when I entered. The board meeting ran long. Through the closed door, I heard raised voices, phrases like necessary restructuring and trimming the fat. When they emerged, Michael wouldn't meet my eyes. Richard looked smugly satisfied. Friday morning, HR called me in before I'd even taken off my coat. Workforce reduction, they called it. Position eliminated. My security badge was deactivated before I'd packed my small box of belongings. 3 years of work ended in a 15-minute meeting with strangers who couldn't even look me in the eye. I tried calling Michael. My texts went unanswered. When I finally caught him leaving the building that evening, his face was a mask I'd never seen before. "It's just business, Athena," he said, voice flat. "We all have to make sacrifices." Then he walked to his waiting car without looking back, leaving me standing on the sidewalk in the rain. That night, I cried until there were no tears left. Not just for the betrayal of a man I thought had loved me, but for my own naivety. I'd wanted so badly to believe that love could transcend ambition, that Michael was different from the rest. I'd almost forgotten why I was really there. My grandfather's attorney, Eleanor, was not surprised by my call. "It was always a risk, Athena," she said, pouring me a cup of tea in her book-lined office. "Working incognito at your own company. Your grandfather would have been proud of your courage, but perhaps not your timing." I hadn't told her about Michael. Some wounds were too fresh to share. "So what now?" I asked, staring into my tea as if it held answers. "Now," she said, pulling out a thick folder, "we remind Phoenix Industries exactly who you are." The truth was both simpler and more complex than most knew. Phoenix Industries wasn't just named after the mythical bird, it was named for my grandmother, Phoenix Winters, whose inheritance had funded my grandfather's first factory. The family trust, established before his death, held 47% of the company's shares. Those shares, as of my 30th birthday last month, were now under my sole control. I wasn't just an heiress. I was the largest individual shareholder, and I'd just been fired from my own company. Eleanor spread documents across her desk, board meeting minutes I'd never seen, evidence of decisions made without proper shareholder notification, financial reports that differed from those I'd handled as Michael's assistant. "They've been keeping secrets," she said. Your grandfather suspected as much. It's why he wanted you to see the company from the inside. That night, I stared at my reflection in the mirror of my apartment, an apartment I'd chosen for its modest rent when I could have afforded penthouses. Who was I really? The efficient, invisible assistant? The woman who'd fallen in love with her boss? Or Athena Winters, rightful leader of Phoenix Industries? By morning, I knew. All of them. Every experience had shaped me, prepared me, and it was time to step into the light. Eleanor's call came exactly 1 week after my termination. Emergency board meeting called for tomorrow at 9 a.m. Apparently there's a cash flow crisis they've been hiding. Your name has been added to the security list. I chose my outfit carefully, a tailored black suit that spoke of authority, not the pencil skirts and sensible blouses I'd worn as an assistant. When I entered the Phoenix building, the security guard did a double-take but said nothing as he handed me a visitor's badge. The boardroom fell silent as I pushed open the heavy wooden doors. 12 faces turned toward me in varying states of confusion, annoyance, and shock. Michael, at the head of the table, froze mid-sentence, his coffee cup suspended halfway to his lips. Ms. Green, Richard Harper recovered first, his tone dismissive. This is a closed meeting. I'm not sure how you got in, but— Actually, I interrupted, my voice steady despite my pounding heart, it's Ms. Winters, Athena Winters. The name fell like a stone into still water. I watched comprehension ripple across their faces, first disbelief, then dawning horror as Eleanor entered behind me, distributing folders to each board member. What you have before you, I continued, taking a seat at the empty chair opposite Michael, is evidence of multiple violations of shareholder notification requirements, as well as what appears to be deliberate misrepresentation of financial data to minority shareholders. Michael hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. His face had drained of all color. As the controlling interest in Phoenix Industries through the Winters Family Trust, I find these actions deeply concerning. Almost as concerning as the systematic dismantling of my grandfather's ethical business practices and, most recently, the wrongful termination of employees without proper cause, including myself. Richard slammed his hand on the table. This is preposterous. You were a secretary. I was an executive assistant, I corrected calmly. A position I chose to better understand the company my family built. A company that has lost its way. My eyes found Michael's across the table. Something flickered there. Recognition, regret. I couldn't be sure. This meeting is now adjourned, I said. We'll reconvene tomorrow at 9 a.m. to discuss the future of Phoenix Industries. I suggest you all come prepared. The weeks that followed were a hurricane of change. Board members resigned. Others pledged newfound loyalty. Richard was the first to go, escorted from the building the same day. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. I moved into my grandfather's old office, not the sleek, modern space Michael had occupied, but the warm, wood-paneled room on the building's east side that had been preserved but unused since my grandfather's death. It felt right. Like coming home. Michael avoided me entirely, communicating only through formal emails and in group settings. I told myself it was better this way, cleaner, but some nights, alone in my office with the city lights blinking below, I remembered the feel of his arms around me on that beach, and the ache was almost unbearable. A month into my leadership, he finally requested a private meeting. He entered my office with none of his usual confidence, looking somehow both more guarded and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. "I didn't know," were his first words. "About your identity. I swear to you, Athena." "Would it have mattered?" I asked. "Would you still have let them fire me if you'd known my last name?" His silence was answer enough. "I loved you," I said simply. "Not CEO Michael Bennett, just you." "And I loved you," he replied, his voice rough. "Not whoever I thought you were. Just you, I still do." "Then why?" "Because I was a coward," he admitted. "Because I let Richard convince me your position was redundant when deep down I knew he just wanted you gone. Because I thought I needed the board's approval more than I needed—" He trailed off, looking lost. More than you needed me, I finished for him. Trust, once broken, doesn't mend easily. But over the following months, as we worked to restore Phoenix Industries to what my grandfather had envisioned, something shifted between us. Michael became my strongest ally in implementing changes. Fair wages across all levels, environmental initiatives, diversity in hiring and promotion. He fought for these things not to impress me, I realized, but because he believed in them too. 1 year to the day after I walked into that boardroom and reclaimed my heritage, Michael and I stood on the same beach where we'd first truly connected. The company was thriving, not just financially, but culturally. Employees spoke of Phoenix as a family again, the way my grandfather had always intended. "I have something for you," Michael said, reaching into his pocket as the sunset painted the sky in impossible colors. But instead of a ring as I'd half expected, he pulled out a small, worn key. "What's this?" I asked, taking it curiously. "The key to my family's cabin in the mountains," he explained. "Where I grew up. Where I learned who I wanted to be before I forgot for a while." He took my hand, his eyes earnest. "I want to take you there. I want you to know all of me, the way I now know all of you." It wasn't a proposal. Not yet. It was something more precious, a promise of transparency, of vulnerability, of the truth we'd both hidden from for too long. I closed my fingers around the key and leaned into his embrace as the waves crashed softly against the shore. There would be time for rings and vows. For now, this second beginning was enough, wiser, stronger, and infinitely more honest than our first. They say power reveals who you truly are. I didn't set out to run Phoenix Industries, I just wanted to understand it. But in losing everything, I found my purpose. In being invisible, I saw what needed to be seen, and in having my heart broken, I discovered my own strength. My grandfather once told me that a business is just people taking care of other people. That's the legacy I'm determined to honor, the future I'm committed to building. Not alone, but with a team who shares that vision, including a man who had to lose me to truly find himself. If you're feeling overlooked or underestimated today, remember my story. Remember that sometimes the path to your destiny takes unexpected turns. Sometimes you have to be willing to be misunderstood before you can be truly seen. Life rarely gives us the endings we expect. Sometimes it gives us something better, if we have the courage to write our own story. If this journey resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to see more stories of unexpected triumph and transformation. And remember, the power to change your narrative has been within you all along. Because the most beautiful plot twist isn't when the world discovers who you are, it's when you do.